Okay, so President Biden made it back to the White House. He's talking about his COVID response. We're going to take a listen. Don't go anywhere, folks. Take a listen for a couple of minutes, because I don't plan on staying this the whole time. If he says something interesting about Afghanistan, we'll dip back in. But let's hear a few minutes from the president, and we'll react on the backside. Take a listen.
Vaccines and 2, masks. Vaccines are the best defense, but masks are extremely helpful as well. And for those who aren't eligible for the vaccine yet, children under the age of 12, masks are the best available protection for them and the adults around them. That's why we need to make sure children are wearing masks in school. Before I talk about the news related to vaccines, let me say a few words about masks and our children. Unfortunately, as we've seen throughout this pandemic, some politicians are trying to turn public safety measures, that is, children wearing masks in school, into political disputes for their own political gain. Some are even trying to take power away from local educators by banning masks in school. They're setting a dangerous tone. For example, last week at a school board meeting in Tennessee, protesters threatened doctors and nurses who were testifying making the case for masking children in schools. The intimidation and the threats we're seeing across the country are wrong. They're unacceptable. I've said before, this isn't about politics. It's about keeping our children safe. It's about taking on the virus together, united. I've made it clear that I'll stand with those who are trying to do the right thing. Last week, I called school superintendents in Florida and Arizona to thank them for doing the right thing and requiring masks in their schools. One of them said, "We teach science, so we follow the science." The other said, they have a guiding principle: students first. I just couldn't agree more with what they both said. That's why today,
blah, 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 mask this, vaccine that, mandate this, same old song and dance. We're going to keep listening to this in the control room so you don't have to. But if he does start to talk about Afghanistan, I want to bring it back and we'll hear what he has to say. In the meantime, back to the real show, the total collapse of Afghanistan. It's a huge geopolitical event, folks. And if we've learned anything from the last 4 years, everything is a political football in America. Every event, every mask, every vaccination, every illegal immigrant. Every toppling of the recipients of 20 years of American blood and treasure in a mere 10 days, we take sides. That's what we do. If you're a conservative or a libertarian, this is on Joe Biden, full stop. If you're a liberal, this is Trump's fault, as ridiculous as that may seem. So yes, we are lining up on two sides, pointing the finger at each other. The media is supposed to be the arbiter of culpability, right and wrong. The media is supposed to report the news without prejudice and, more importantly, without bias. Unfortunately, we don't have an unbiased media. We have a liberal media. Need some proof? Well, that's what I do. The most recent polling shows over 69% of the American people are tired of Biden's handling of the Afghanistan disintegration and his plan. Now let's listen to a political hack who happens to be the host of a show on MSNBC.
95% of the American people will agree with everything he just said. 95% of the press covering this White House will disagree. And for an American president to finally be completely aligned with such an overwhelming majority of what the American people think about Afghanistan is probably a tremendous relief to the American people.
Wow. You can't be a bigger toad for a president who is clearly failing. No one believes you, Nicole. Quit being a fool. Or how about that CNN reporter we told you about yesterday who completely ignored the fact that the Taliban are bloody terrorists who hate America and suggested they, quote, seem friendly just as they're chanting death to America. Bias much, CNN? Reminds me of last summer when MSNBC, trying to cover for Black Lives Matter and Antifa, who are literally burning down neighborhoods in Minnesota, did this.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not, generally speaking, unruly, but fires have been started.
Mostly peaceful, folks. That's what they said. Do they even try to hide their bias anymore? No, they don't. Finally, social media is media. There are quadrillion examples of the bias Twitter and Facebook and YouTube deliver to their conservative users. We are shadow banned, we're regulated, and we're deplatformed in ways liberals never are. Look no further than Twitter, where 2 Taliban spokesmen are actively delivering their propaganda to American users. They even told a young Twitter user how he can join the Taliban when he was asked by, quote, going to Afghanistan, get this, parental permission first. Whatever. By the way, these killers who are slaughtering women in the streets of Kabul remain on Twitter while a former U.S. president is banned for life. Way to go at Jack. Your bias is palpable.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.